Build a strong and bonded team, always promoting teamwork with a firm belief that the team always wins over individual achievements. From December 2020 till date, Debbie Furtado is the Principal Group Engineering Manager, managing Azure Active Directory, a Microsoft Enterprise cloud-based identity and access management solution. Azure AD is the backbone of the Office 365 system. So, we, the staff of Government College Stonewalla, along with our principal and vice principal, welcome you, Engineer Debbie Furtado, and waiting that the participants will make best use of a highly qualified and experienced personality. Think big, achieve big. Thank you. Principal ma'am, are you there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, ma'am, please say a few words to welcome our guest.
Uh,
This is
thank,
Gary
thank
Furtado.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, very much. Uh,
Thank
Very
you
good
so much for
morning,
having me.
Sado madam. So nice of you that you have accepted our invitation and be present over with us today with our young students. Listening to your very enriched curriculum vitae, I'm sure that I should attend your webinar first because for a principal, management is a first thing and a big knot that I need to work with. So I will be highly privileged to listen to you uh, for the today's seminar. Moreover, uh, my students will be more benefited because they have got long life to go ahead with it. The key point that we are going to discuss is the skills that are managerial skills that are required in management. Okay, so being engineering side and now with the on other side of the fence when you are joining it or amalgating this to your ideas, engineer on one side and management aspects on other side. I'm very sure skill we are going to listen a skill based talk today from you. So we welcome you at our webinar platform of Government College Khandora on behalf of our Department of Vocational Studies and on behalf of my Anna Gracie Fernandez and the entire Department of Vocational Studies. I welcome you to our webinar platform. We will be very eagerly waiting to hear for you, and we are waiting that our students will take maximum benefit of your presence today. Thank you for accepting our invitation, being with us today. It's really a very proud moment for us, that you are with us today with our young students. Okay, so certainly, as Gracie said, and think big and dream also will become big. Yes, I also stand by with her. We need to think big to act big. Okay, all the best.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Over to you, Daddy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracie. Thank you, ma'am, and thanks a lot, for having me here. I think the privilege is mine. I mean, it's you faculty members of Goa are highly respected, and yes, thank you for the long detailed introduction. So that was really kind of you guys. Let me go ahead and start presenting so that I can actually talk a little bit about what I do and how and stuff like that. And can you see the screen? No, right?
No, not
Oh,
yet.
No, we can't.
okay. Okay. Now is it good?
Yes, yes, it's coming.
Okay. Awesome.
Yes, yes.
Okay, awesome. So I am going to, so Gracie came and told me, hey, can you speak about, a topic? And I thought about, multiple topics, and then I thought, one of the things that we all aspire to be is, a manager, right? Someone else's manager. And so I thought, why not just talk about some of that and just some of the things that you would need to do to grow, and you would need to do it just open ended, right? Open ended, and at any point in time, if you guys feel you need to ask me any question, please feel free to stop and ask me a question. I am more than happy to answer. So with that, let me get started. Um, so I have. So a little bit about myself. Let me start there. And the reason I put this here is just to say that I am 100% educated and brought up in Goa, and I studied in Sharda Mandir, did my BE Computers in Goa Engineering College. I have taught for 3 to 5 months in Condola College, and this is, on a temporary basis. And I had the privilege to teach third year computer bachelor, BSc students and computers, and I think that was the best time of my entire career. They were, I think, one of my best batches too, and so really, I mean, I'm still in touch with some of them. So yes, and then I then went on to do my MBA finance, and the sad reason for this is that I couldn't find a job in Goa. And so Goa at that time was, a place where there were very limited software engineering jobs. And I couldn't find a job in Goa, and my mom wouldn't let me go out of Goa. She was always very protective about me. She wanted to make sure that she kept me safe. And so she wouldn't let me go out of Goa. And I'm sure you guys are wondering that if she didn't let you go out of Goa, how did you reach the US? That's a big, long story. So we won't get there. But through support of friends and family members, I did make it to the US on my own. She was trying to get me married and then send me to the US, and that didn't work out, thankfully. And so I managed to come here on my own, again, like I said, with the blessings and help of some of my friends. So with that, and I came in through a consulting company, joined Microsoft as a contractor, and then within a few months became full time in Microsoft. And so I have been a software engineer. Of course, I started in Microsoft as a software engineer, and I have been in multiple teams. I have been in Bing Ads, Windows Phone Services, and currently in Azure Identity. And these are just multiple teams within Microsoft, and Microsoft is a huge company. And when I say huge, I never understood what huge really meant when I was in Goa. And so just to give you what huge really means, it's just the Redmond. Redmond is Microsoft's headquarters. And in Redmond, we have about 100 3 to 4 story buildings. And so that's kind of how huge Microsoft is. Anyway, so there are multiple teams here, and I have been fortunate to work in some of the key teams. And so these are so this is kind of, and I just grew as an engineer, from an engineer to a manager, and today I am a manager of managers. Fortunate to have that opportunity. So feel free to interrupt me at any point in time and ask me any questions. I will pause a bit between slides, and so if anyone feels like asking me a question, please feel free to do so. Okay. So moving on. By the way, so the purpose of my previous slide was just to tell you that Goa is a great place. The education you get in Goa is amazing. And I am one of the few people who I know in. There are quite a few people from Goa in Microsoft. So really, it's really up to you to put in your best, and how much you put in is what you get out. And so that's just something kind of for you to keep in mind. And of course, there is also, a little bit of luck and a little bit of, friends and circumstances, right? So you can be fortunate there too, but it's a lot how much you want to do things. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about the technologies we work on. For mostly Microsoft technologies, we work only on Microsoft Stack. So the server and backend technologies are usually C# .NET. That's kind of standard. UX, which is user interface, are usually built on top of JavaScript and TypeScript. Databases, we rely on mostly Cosmos DB and Custo. And then deployment technologies, we use our Kubernetes and EAP. EAP is Microsoft's Elastic Autopilot. And it's just a deployment orchestration system. And then, we use several Azure resources like VMs, Azure Metrics, blob storage, table storage, and things like that. Any questions so far? Okay, moving on. So So before I start with, what we look out for in managers or what we do or anything like that, let me start with what does a software engineer really do, right? What does a day-to-day look like for a software engineer? And of course, every manager has been a software engineer at some point of time or the other. You cannot become a manager of software engineers, without being a software engineer, right? That's how you grow. So some of the things that the devs do is design, create the design, right? So basically you would look at the specs, see the requirements, see what customers want, see how scalable the system needs to be, what should be the inputs, what would be the outputs, does it need to support an API, is it just UX, do you have to do validation on the UX, things like that. So a lot of that is detailed in the spec. The spec is written by program managers. Now, in Microsoft, we have developers, which are software engineers, and we have program managers. So, program managers are their whole responsibility is to interface with the customers and collect all these requirements and give it to the developers. And the developers' responsibility is to think from a technical perspective and come up with a detailed design for to support the spec requirements, and to come up with a detailed design, right? Like what would I use as my database, what would I use, what kind of validations I would do on my API layer, how would I expose my API layer, what would that look like, what do I need an intermediate service or not, how do I need to cache anything, does it need to be performant, what should be the latency, a lot of that kind of goes into the design, right? So that's entirely what the developer does. So that is kind of one of the main things. And then code is, of course, you code per the design. So you've come up with this design, so you need to create a cache, you need to do all of that. And I guess all of you are familiar with coding for a design. And so and as devs, we spend a lot of time coding. That said, now we also spend a lot of time reviewing the spec. When I say reviewing, I mean, so you would take a look at the spec and then you would try and figure out, you would ask questions, right? Is this covered? Does it need to be scalable? What kinds, what's the audience? How does, um, how what would be the traffic, does it need throttling, so there's a lot of those kinds of questions that come in, and so that kind of gets captured in the while you're reviewing the spec. Similar, and then after you review the spec, the next stage is you would write the design, right? You would come up with the design. So that design is reviewed by other technical engineers. It's also reviewed by some of the PMs, just to clarify some of the requirements. But so that is also reviewed. So that's another thing you would do. You would review somebody else's design. If you wrote your own design, you would get it reviewed by other engineers. And then you would, of course, we also review code, right? So you write code and then you put it into the system. You send out a PR, which is a pull request, and in ADO. And other devs will take a look at the code, put comments in your code, and just comments, suggestions. So the whole purpose of this thing is to catch issues as early as possible, right? So the earlier you catch it, the cheaper it is. So if you catch it in the spec review phase, it's the cheapest, right? And then if you catch it in the design review phase, it's still cheap. Code reviews, still cheap, you're still good. Testing phase, it's still good. Once it goes to production, that's where it becomes very expensive, right? Because by then you have impacted customers. If at all, we operate under an SLA. An SLA is basically terms that we sign with the customers, saying that, hey, our service will be up 4 nines, and so if we are down even a little bit, then we in some cases we may have to pay the customers. So the earlier you catch issues, the better, and the cheaper it is. The later you catch it, of course, you have to, the cost just goes up. So and of course there's the whole dev cost, and then you revert the build, and then you go through this whole postmortem exercise, and you present it to the leadership team, and then you get grilled about, okay, how this happened, how can we prevent it from happening again, etc., etc. And so but that's kind of so, and that's part of the reason why emphasis is always there on the review stage. So that said, so you do all these reviews, you help others do reviews, and then of course you test your own code, right? There was a time in Microsoft where we had a whole a different discipline called the test discipline, and all they did was they tested the code, they wrote tools to test the code, and they also did performance testing on the code. And then at some point, Microsoft realized that, hey, this is not the growth path isn't too great, and really the dev should test the code. And so so then that whole discipline got merged into devs, or some of them, were asked to leave or whatever. So now we don't have tests anymore. We only have developers and engineers, and so engineers have to do the testing. And so we have to do unit testing, functional testing. Unit testing is basically you write your code, you run it, then it should work. You have dependency injection in the code, and so it should just work, right? And then functional testing is when you actually have to deploy the components and make sure that they actually communicate with each other. And usually it's a limited scope of components that you're testing. And then end-to-end testing is where you actually have everything deployed, and you run an end-to-end case. So from the UX, this is what needs to happen. Then it needs to go into your service. It has to do these computations. Then it has to make it all the way to the database. So this is the whole end-to-end testing, right? So that's what we call the integration tests. So those are the sets of tests that the devs write. And so now when you're estimating code, and of course we do estimation too, I'll come to planning a bit later. But when you estimate code, you have to keep in mind that you are writing the test for the code, and so your quality, you are responsible basically for the quality. That said, so now the next thing, of course, that we do is we build in fundamentals, which is fundamentals are just basically things that are now part of the infrastructure. And so things like metrics. Metrics are just things like typically performance metrics. How long did this method take? So typically, how long does this call take to make a call out to a dependent service? And then you write monitors on top of, or it's either that, or it's like, how many times did this call get made? How many times you metric your errors, and then you write monitors on top of these metrics. And so the monitors basically you would say something like, okay, if we get more than 3,000 requests from this particular customer, then we want to alert, or we get from any one customer, we want to alert. And then if at all your like for example, in an API usage, if your throughput goes so high, then you want to make sure that you throttle, right? So because you cannot have one customer basically do a DOS attack on you, and so you want to make sure that it's properly throttled. So you have all these monitors. You just have normal monitors that said that, hey, traffic has gone really high, our CPU is really high, things like that, wherein the devs then get called, and they take a look at it. So those are the monitors and the alerts. And then logging, of course, you need logging for debugging purposes. Did anyone have a question? I heard some sound. Okay. And then so fundamentals, of course, are built into the lower layers. And then you have deployment, right? Wherein you actually any questions? Okay. So then you go ahead and you have you deploy, and so when you deploy to multiple environments. And so just to make sure that whatever code we deploy to production is really it's good quality, it's out there. You want to make sure that you deploy multiple environments, because the key difference between deployments in multiple environments is typically the config changes. And so you want to make sure you catch any kind of config changes, any kind of config issues in the different environments. So we have a test environment, which is an environment, a set of machines that we would run test code on, and we would test it. So and then the next one is the pre-prod environment, which is just before production. So it's almost like production. We respect it like production. It's almost like production. We also have traffic on it. We have some of our internal partners calling the pre-prod. And then you have production. Production is like, it goes into, of course, US data centers. And then it also goes into multiple data centers across the world. So we would have, an Australian data center, centers in India, centers in Europe, right? And so then you keep, and what we do, we do what is called a staged rollout. So basically we deploy to one environment, wherein a small percentage of customers are hitting that environment. And so if there is any issue, and then we wait for about a day, and then the next day we go deploy to the next environment. So if at all any customers run into an issue, and there's an issue with code, it gets caught in the very first environment before it goes into the second. So basically, we have impacted customers, but a very small percentage of customers. And and then once it goes into the next, and then we get a larger set of customers kind of accessing us. So that's how we deploy, right? Stage rollouts, and then the devs also do what we call Devops, which means supporting the service. Now, again, there used to be a time when we had an operations team. I mean, I look back and I think, wow, we had luxuries at that time as developers. But anyway, so we had an operations team, and so the whole duty of this team was to support the service in production. So if at all anything happened, they would get called. So if the service went down in the middle of the night, they would get called. We wouldn't. And then they had TSGs. So the devs would give them TSGs. TSGs are troubleshooting guides, where the service engineer then would take a look at the troubleshooting guide and then figure out what to do and fix it, right? So over time, we realized that the troubleshooting guides weren't maintained because I mean, they would fix it. They would take the trouble of fixing it, and they would never come and tell us that, hey, this thing needs to be optimized, because they didn't even think it could be optimized, right? And so, and over time we realized, hey, you know what? If we put the devs in charge of operations, then they will not just fix the problem; they will fix the root of the problem, right? And so, lo and behold, we got rid of the ops team, and or they do a very restricted tasks today. And now the devs do on call. And what that means is that in a week, we will have so about in 8 devs, for example, every week they'll get rotated, and on for one particular week they'll be on call. So they could get called in the middle of the night, and so sometimes when Europe wakes up, an issue can hit, and so we would get called in the middle of the night, and but most of the time that's not the case. And so the standard thing, and so for me it's always that if you get called, it's really you should have done something to prevent that. And so in other words, let's make sure that we deploy a really good high quality service, so then you won't have that issue, right? And so in most cases we are good. I think it's very rare that we get called in the middle of the night. Anyway, so that is DevOps. So that's kind of the whole set of responsibilities that software engineer does. Any questions? Okay. So, and I think this is kind of standard mode of operation for most software engineering companies. But I could be wrong. But many companies over here, that's how they operate. All right. So let's talk a little bit. So that's what a software engineer does. Let's talk a little bit about what a manager does, right? So manager, and like Principal Ma'am said, that everyone. I mean, so she also does management, and that is true, in fact, for a lot of you, right? I mean, you may not realize it, but then there are certain things that you do, like for example, delivering on a project, or meeting certain deadlines, timelines. You won't even, you may not realize it, but you will plan it in such a way that in other words, you are managing, right, in some way. But so the official, some of the official responsibilities of manager are: one is manage the business, right? Make sure that you create a vision and a mission and drive towards it. And when I say business, it doesn't have to be a huge, large scale business like managing Microsoft. That's different. You could have literally something as small as applications, right? So you're just managing applications for a particular area, and that's it, right? But that is your business. So you have to create, you have to think about where you want to take that, what you want to do with applications. And so to me, I always tell people, think that little project of yours is, and I tell this to my own devs, think that little project of yours is, you are the CEO of that company. And so how would you want to make money? How would you want to drive it? Where think about cogs that you're using for it. Cogs usually is the lowest of our priority, but it is still there. But just generally, where do you want to take it? How do you want people to use it? What do you think, what kind of features can you build into it that people would want to use it? So it's basically just expand your thinking. So um so so yeah so you create a vision and a mission and you drive towards it, and then you handle and alter processes for efficiency. And this is just generally so as a manager, of course, you can see the whole team functioning, and then you want to make sure that, okay, we have regular scrums, we have process in place, we have regular meetings with PMs, any kind of things that come up that end up blocking, we can resolve it, and stuff like that, right? So that's another thing that we look out for, is just streamlining processes. And then we have and of course, as a manager, you also would create a culture, and this comes more because of the number of people that you manage. And so you would create a culture and make sure that some of your top values are basically emphasized, and so everyone kind of lives up to them. And then you also look to achieve results, right? You are managing a business. If you're managing a business, that business better pay you in some way, right? As in some kind of a profit margin. It doesn't have to be a selling thing. It could be your service has to do really well for customers to rely on it. And sometimes it's only as good as that, right? So, and then once it becomes reliable, after that you get to charge them and all that. So anyway, so the achieve results is kind of key. um, and then we go on to so that's one part. The next part is managing people. Of course, as a manager, you have a team reporting to you, and so if a team reports to you, then you have to make sure that you can manage those people. Now, in Microsoft, right, we put a lot of emphasis on not so much on the commanding philosophy or that nature, but more on motivation and inspiring, right? So a manager's biggest responsibility is to get the best out of people, right? And so as a manager, and you'll hear this very often, that everybody is different. And so as a manager, you need to be able to understand the person. You have to understand the skill set of the person, and you have to accordingly be able to capitalize on that person's positive strengths and downplay the weakness, right? And so that's something that you learn over time, right? Of course, initially you just want the work done, but over time you realize that, hey, this is possible. And so that is basically so we inspire people. We don't command them, right? And this is great, kind of, even for so whenever people say, oh yeah, but that person's reporting to you, and so it's easy for you to tell them. And I keep saying that's not true, because we also rely a lot on indirect management. That is, even if you don't, like, I don't manage the PM team, but if at all I need something done from them, then we have to build up relationships with them. We have to learn how to collaborate with them in such a way. So that's kind of indirect managing. They don't really report to you, but you still kind of have to manage them. And so that is something that I always encourage people to do, is that, hey, just influence, impact and influence, right? So influence other people effectively. You are indirectly managing them too. um, Anyway, so then, as a people manager, you also have to reward the people. You have to recognize their efforts. You have to somehow convey to them that, hey, whatever you've done is valuable. And so over time, you realize how, a small thank you, a public email that says, thank you so much for doing this, is very well appreciated. And it encourages and motivates people a lot more than, just taking it for granted that that person had to do it because it was his job, right? And so just a little bit recognition. And then we have the formal rewards, wherein we go through a whole reward process to determine who should get what rewards. And so based on that person's contribution, accordingly that person gets more higher bonus versus other people, or higher bonus in stock versus other people. Anyway, so then and then, of course, you also want to grow and manage careers of the employees. So it's not only that you get work done from them, you also want to see how you can help them grow and them learn new things, and give them a stretch responsibility, help them grow in careers, and things like that. So that's something that you always have to keep. And your manager is the only one who can identify opportunities that can match your strengths, and so that is something that it's a skill for a manager to do. So that's about managing people. And how am I doing on time? Okay. And then you have collaboration, right? So this, like I mentioned earlier, it's not just you have to indirectly manage people around you, but it's also about working with them and sharing what you've done, helping them reuse some of the work that you've done, um, also reuse some of the work that they have done. And so I mean, at my level, I have to collaborate with people in the office team, in the compute team. These are teams kind of outside of our teams, and so basically collaborate with them, and see what we can reuse, what we can exchange ideas. And in fact, I have somebody like helping really closely with some of the work that we are doing. And then make requests and follow up on those requests, right? You will realize over time that following up is so critical, right? Because sometimes you make a request and it's so common for people to just lose it. And so as a manager, you just have to make sure that your business is running. So you made a request, you typically would have to follow up with it too. So anyway, so that's kind of all about collaboration. So any questions? Okay, we'll take questions at the end then, I guess. All right. So what does a software engineering manager do? Right. So this is kind of very specific to a software engineering manager. So one of the things we do is, so as a software engineering manager, you are a technical manager. You are also a people manager. And so, in addition to just the high level things that I mentioned earlier, we also participate, contribute, and review the specs with the PM team, as well as the designs that the devs come up with. We review typically the designs within our own team, and sometimes even cross team. Right? So sometimes you have a high level major component being designed, and so a lot of managers are just called into. We have these regular chalk talk series wherein we talk about just complex designs and how we go through it, and what are optimizations we can do and things like that. And then, of course, planning and execution. So this is basically planning and execution of deliverables, and you want to make sure that it's by committed timelines. We plan in so the PMs think about features and all more in in fiscal years. So basically a whole year, but we plan kind of in semesters, and then we actually execute in quarters, right? So every 3 months we will decide what we can. So for this is where we come up with estimates, and based on the estimates and based on the number of devs available, accordingly we can say we can commit to this much, or we cannot commit to these things, right? Based on how big the project is. And so once we commit to them, we have to meet the deadline, the timelines, and in this case, the end of the quarter. um, there's no bad thing if you don't meet it. It's not bad at all, but at the same time, then you develop a reputation of missing your timelines, which is not good either. And so either way, so you have to make a pretty good estimate in order to be considered reliable, right? So that's kind of another thing that a manager does, and that kind of falls more on the manager's shoulders. And in that case, the manager being makes the call about is this the key priority? Is it not? There are a lot of uncertain things that come in during a particular quarter, and so the manager will make a decision of deprioritizing something else and taking this instead. Or so the prioritization calls are made by the manager, right, based on what direction the business needs to go in, and based on what blocks come in during the quarter. So coding of non-critical components, as a manager, you also are expected to code, depending, of course, on the number of reports you have. In some cases, if it all the reports, if you have like 6 reports, then coding is kind of is expected. But if all you have like 8 to 10, then maybe you don't have to code, depending on how much collaboration you're doing. But it's always a good thing to code, because you kind of stay in touch with some of the with the technologies and the issues and problems of the devs. And so that's always good. But at the same time, you will code the non-critical components. By that, what I mean, I don't mean they are not important. I just mean that they don't have to be done by the end of a certain timeline, right? So In other words, at one point I had started coding the APIs, and the APIs were we didn't have a timeline on them. It was just that one of the things that was needed to be done, but could finish at any time. There was no timeline, right? So you take the non-critical path only so that if anything comes up, that is your first priority, right? Managing the team is your first priority. Coding is not. So you have to drop what you're doing coding wise and make sure that the team is running well, and then you come back to your coding, right? And so non-critical components is important there. And then you have regular scrums and sync ups and sprint planning meetings, wherein you basically just figure out, okay, where are we? What do we need to do? Is this the right priority? What are the blocks? Is anyone blocked? What can we do to unblock? So things like that we'll talk about in the in our sync up meetings. And so the sync up meetings are usually, at some point it used to be once a week. We followed the agile sprint methodologies, and so it was once a week, well, every day, sorry. And then we dropped it. I think originally it was once a week, and then it was every day, and then it became a little too much, and then we decided to do twice a week. And so now twice a week is standard rhythm, and the sprint usually lasts for about 2 weeks. And so we just take small projects, kind of, to say that, hey, this will be completed in this sprint, and then we keep a tab on the progress of these projects, and so that really helps. And then as like, and to fulfill your people manager part, you have one-on-ones with the developers. So every dev, like if you have 6 devs in the team, you would meet with them one-on-one, as in you would just meet with this one dev and then talk about that person about generally status updates. But through the status updates, you're always thinking about career development, right? And so if that person says, I encountered this issue and this other person wasn't helping or whatever, then you give advice on how that person could navigate through a collaboration with this other person, right? And so and also, how do you grow in your career? And so you basically give advice to the different developers, what they can do better, what can they stop doing, and things like that. So regularly, like once a week or once in 2 weeks, you meet with the different devs and you talk to them about their career progression too. And then, as far as DevOps are concerned, we are the incident managers. And so by that, what it means is that if there's any kind of critical thing that happens, the devs start looking and debugging and troubleshooting it, but then the incident manager comes in to see what is the best thing to do, right? So sometimes the devs get a little bit sidelined into trying to debug and troubleshoot the issue instead of just rolling back, like roll back to the previous build and unblock the customers. And so so then the impact time is very small compared to if you start debugging the issue, then the impact time just is much larger. And sometimes it's not as black and white as that. In some cases, it's like, okay, the issue has happened and there is no easy way to roll back. And so the incident manager then makes a higher level call to say that, okay, you know what, let's do this instead. Okay, can we pull that out of rotation? Can we point to this other data center instead? So so there are like slightly higher level. So the incident manager just takes a higher level view and a much more calmer view about what the issue is and how can we better uh, reduce the impact of that incident. So those are kind of some of the things that the software engineering manager does. All right. Next one. So what does a manager expect, right? And so this is something, at any point in time, you have managers. In any system you have managers, right? Like in the education system, of course, you have teachers. They are implied managers, and so and the principal is their manager of all the teachers. And so there is always that, right? And so just generally, what does a manager expect? And this, I think, is kind of just standard. One of the top things I tell people is don't do just what you're asked to do, right? Do more. And by that, it doesn't mean just quantity wise do more. It means, just always strive to go above and beyond what you are supposed to do, right? Like if someone, asks you to go ahead and code, don't, I mean, to me, it's much more valuable when people don't just blindly code. They actually think through it a little bit and come back to you with, maybe questions about, well, why are we doing it this way? Wouldn't this be better then? Like, so just go beyond and above and beyond. And this is kind of true with anything you're asked to do. Um, Unblock yourself, right? And even others where possible. And by that, what I mean is that sometimes you're just stuck. You don't know what to do. In fact, it's interesting, but this is kind of one of our standard interview questions. How did you unblock yourself? Anyway, so you could be stuck. So there are different ways, right? Some people will just get stuck, and then there'll be days that go by and they're not able to unblock themselves because they haven't reached out to anyone. They don't know who to reach out. They haven't really been able to research the right problem. They haven't really found the issue. So it's a lot about that independence, right? I mean, how independent are you? Can you unblock yourself? Do you always have to go and ask somebody else for help for every problem you encounter? Do you have a way to unblock yourself? Like the typical good thing is to do a quick internet search, and try and figure out whether there are solutions there, and within like 2 to 4 hours, if you can't figure it out, go reach out to somebody else and try and get the answer. But first try it on your own, right? Because when you try it on your own, you learn so much. So that's one of the things, right? So the more independent you are, the more people a manager will get to rely on you. And navigate on your own, be curious and reach out. By that, what I mean is basically just be curious, right? Ask questions. And for me, it's like I really love having a new set of eyes on anything. And so whenever we have new hires, it's so valuable because and I encourage them to ask questions. And most of them are a little shy and nervous about asking questions, but that's kind of the most valuable thing you can do, right? So be curious, reach out, ask questions, drive your project end to end, right? By this, what I mean is, the whole follow up thing, right? I mean, there are times when I will hear from someone, well, I asked the PM for that, but that PM hasn't responded. Right? Okay, so what are you doing about it? Well, nothing. I'm waiting for the response. What do you mean you're waiting for the response, right? So do something. I mean, you are the driver, right? You didn't get a response. Reach out to the PM. I am the PM. There are so many ways to just walk over to that person's office. Of course, now it's difficult, but like do so basically make sure that whatever you were supposed to do, you manage to do it on your own, right? And so driving your project end to end is so critical. That's like one of the biggest things we talk about when we are trying to promote people. Resolve ambiguity, right? And sometimes there are these, by you are given two different problems, and or you're given a very ambiguous problem, right? Create go create a ticketing system, for example, right? That's ambiguous. You don't know what it is and how to create it, and how many people, who are the customers, and what kind of ticketing system. So there's a lot of that. So resolve it on your own, right? Go ask the right questions or whatever, but try to get it to a very much structured format. So now you can bring it down to, okay, ticketing system. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do, just the input side, and so this is what the input is, this is what the output is, so whatever it is, right? So it now it's a much more structured problem. So from an ambiguous problem, you brought it down to a much more structured problem, right? So that is important. Just and a lot of your thinking plays into that. Demonstrate your drive for excellence, right? This is something that I always think that if I'm doing something, I want to do it to the best that I can, right? Not to the best there ever is, not the best other people can, because that is not my ability, right? It's the best I can, and if I can't do it to the best I can, then I shouldn't do it, right? It's like, if I mean, there are a lot of things that you and that you can do. You have a choice, and in some cases you don't have a choice, right? Like studying is not your choice. I'm sure it's your parents' choice, but so do it. But if you're doing it, right? If you are spending time, you are coming to college, you are doing it, then do the best you can, right? Put in your full effort, and just so strive for excellence in whatever it is you're doing. Strive for excellence, and then it'll just show up on your work, right? So one of the ways I rate some of the devs is most of my devs is through their skill set, right? Because My logic is that if their skill set, if they have a certain skill set, as in are they organized? Do they think? Do they brainstorm multiple problems? Do they collaborate effectively? So if they have that skill set, it will just show up on their work, right? And so so anyway, so yeah, they always try to demonstrate your drive for excellence, no matter what you do. um, grow the team around you, right? And by that, it does, you don't have to be a manager to do that. You just you basically impact people, right? And so it's interesting how, there'll be certain people that, in a team, you can tell who stands out, right? Because that person would be someone who will give advice or who will give direction, and who will talk to you about how your design is and what you could do better. And people, just get attracted to that person. That person's like a magnet, right? So people just go to that person for advice because they get advice from that person, right? So effectively, that person is actually impacting and growing the team around you, right? So a lot of this, we do is through impact and influence. um, uh, I know we're running out of time, but I will try to keep this short, but let's see. Impact the product around you, of course, by whatever you do. Make sure that, the you are basically growing the product, right? And in whatever efficiency ways, or however, you are contributing to the product, right? So make that impact. And then ask questions and propose solutions. I will always tell people, when they come to me with a question, and they'll be like, should I do this or should I do that? There was a time I used to just answer, and now I tell them, you tell me, what do you think you should do? Right? And so that little bit, right? If they just think a little bit, then they come up with their own solution. They'll say, I think I should do A because it is critical. We really don't have much time, and da da da. And it's so if you are asking solutions, go with the solution. Sorry, if you're asking questions, go with the solutions. Um, Okay, so that is some of the key things that stand out to me in a dev. So what does this mean for you? I'll keep this brief. It means be independent, and none of this needs explanation, so I'll keep it brief. Be independent, be creative, be bold and fearless, right? By that, there are several times, I have not been bold and fearless. I want to ask a question in a meeting, and I will hesitate, and I won't ask. And then after that, it will turn out that, that would have been a good question, because, and then I will follow up offline, and it'll be that, oh yeah, that's a great question. Maybe we could have gotten feedback from, XYZ in the meeting, and so anyway, so by being bold, right, you also get the respect, right? So that's something that, I would encourage people to be, and be dedicated and committed. Like I said, just basically, put in your best, and you will get the best out. Be able to handle ambiguity. Be a driver and a communicator. It's important to also communicate. The fact that, so we have this thing called manage up and manage up, manage down, everyone knows, but manage up, what that means is that if you're driving something, and you know that your manager is relying on you for certain timelines, and if it's not going as planned, it would help so much to just tell your manager that, you know what, it's not going as planned, I'm running into these issues, and I'm handling it, right? Just being able to communicate that kind of helps a lot. And so being an effective communicator, is important too. Be a thinker and a doer, not just a doer. You be a thinker too. Think out and brainstorm different problems. Yeah. And I think this is the last slide, so I will go real quick. How do you grow, right? How do you always start, as a developer, and you always start small. Right? I started so small. I think, at some point, I think I did a data entry. I qualified, bachelor's, be a computer person, and I did, data entry at some point, and I earned, I think, 100 rupees for it, and I was so happy. Anyway, so yeah, so you always start small, and then you'll get somewhere. So that actually taught me quite a bit too, right? You will understand how to automate, and you will start questioning and things like that. Anyway, and then work hard, right? Put in whatever you've got, do the best you can. They say you reap what you sow, and so just make sure that you sow really good seeds, and you will reap really good. you'll do really well. Be sincere, right? I mean, at some it's like I learned this from someone that if at all you want to if you want to just be open and readable, right? In a way, it's like sometimes like I don't like interacting with people who are manipulative, and if I've realized they are manipulative, then you don't want to interact with them. But anyway, so being open and honest, I think, always helps. Try to help others. We live in a world where we live with others, and so there are always people you can help in some way or the other. And in some cases, if you can't help, that's fine, but just try to, right? I mean, it's always good to impact people around you too. And if you genuinely do it, you never know how it pays in the future, right? So always be helpful wherever you can. Some people are privileged, and it's always nice to help other people who are not privileged in that exact area. Be ambitious, think big. Don't just like for the longest time I thought, oh, I can never be a manager, and this is when I was in STD. And I thought, oh, I can never be a manager. And then I would look around at people, and I would say, I think I'll make a better manager than that person, and that person, and that person. And yeah, of course, that person's like a way better manager than I am. But then I was like, and they always say, if you want to be something, pretend you already are that thing, right? You pretend you already are there, and you will get there. You will automatically develop the skills to get there. And so, at some point, you have to dream big, right? And just think big, whether you're capable or no, because you will always feel, if you always think the way you do, you will always be the person you are, right? You have to think bigger than the way you do, and you'll get there. Voice your opinion, whatever it is. Learn to voice it politely. Politely always helps, but do voice your opinion, especially if you feel it'll help someone, it'll help a situation. And I've always heard that whether you like it or not, I think it always helps to voice your opinion. You can do it in a really polite way. Like at some point, one of my managers told me that always think the good of the other person, and think that whatever you're saying to that person, even though it's insulting, like for example, if I have to tell someone, hey, your code sucks, I mean, it's bad quality, even though you have to say something so rude, you can say it politely, right? But think, you can think negatively about that person. You can say, what, your quality is really bad. Or you can say, grow that person, right? How do you grow that person? And if you genuinely believe you want to grow that person, and so then instead of saying your code quality is really bad, you will just put it in a nicer way, right? You will tell that person how genuinely you want to help that person, and you will communicate the same thing in a much polite way. So anyway, so voice your opinion politely, but and then strategize. There are brute force ways of doing things. You just make someone do it, and just say, do it. I don't care whether you like it or not, just do it. I try this with my kids. I don't strategize with them. That's brute force. But strategy always helps. In a lot of cases, you will find a different way. Like I remember one of my batchmates used to say, let's create a win-win situation, right? So some way in which I will win, and some way in which you will win too, right? And and sometimes it's just playing by the rules, but playing it differently, right? And you will notice that that helps a lot. And then network, right? Networking helps so much. In fact, I get these requests and I keep declining them, and then one person will set up a meeting with me just to talk about their request. And when I say request, these are feature requests. And only because that person has set up the meeting with me and is explaining to me what the issue is, I suddenly changed my no, I cannot do it, to yeah, you know what, we'll definitely do it. And so that personal connection is so important, right? So wherever you can build your network, it's very easy to reach out to people, and you will help spread your goodness, and you will also be able to avail of the other person's goodness too. So with that, finally, any questions? I'm so sorry for the, I spoke more than needed, but any questions, guys and girls?
Yeah, there is one question in the chat, Debbie.
Yeah.
Someone has asked about How to manage customers' expectations? Siddhi has asked. How to
Uh,
manage customers' expectations?
okay, so I don't need to see the chat. So that usually is done by the PM team. So that's the team that interacts very closely with customers. But it is so basically you that's a very open-ended question. But it's if the customer wants a certain thing, you basically you would be able to tell them. One is of course clarify what the requirements are or whatever, and then what the PMs typically do is they'll come, they'll consult the devs and they'll see whether it's feasible or not, and then they'll go back to the customer and say that we can do this, we can't really do what you want, but we can do this thing in between. And then we'll communicate a timeline. Right now, there was a time when our PMs would aggressively communicate timelines, but now we are at a point wherein we understand that, and we'll communicate a timeline. And along with that timeline, we'll also communicate tentatively that this will actually, we can land this mostly by the end of June, but it will be best effort, and and we will land it by end of June, but and that is best effort, right? So basically they'll put it in slightly uh, I mean, not guaranteed terms, right? And then, and if the end of June it happens and things go well, everything is good. But if it doesn't, then the PM will again reach out to the customers and say that we apologize for this is the reason why it didn't happen, and so because of that, uh, it will happen end of August, right? And so something like that. So that's how typically we do. Does that help? I don't know whether that was the question, but
Thank you so much, Debbie, for a wonderful talk. I request the participants if you have any questions to kindly ask. And there is a feedback form which has been posted in the chat. Those who fill the feedback form will be able to get the certificates at the end.
sorry,
Can
I
you
think there was a question.
can you see some can you see the questions in the chat, Debbie?
Yes,
Or
I
should I?
can.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sudesh,
Sudesh. Hi, Sudesh. Um,
Hello, Debbie.
hey.
How are
So
you?
Sudesh is one of my students, right, Sudesh? Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm the first.
One of our best batches. Okay, so someone is working with you for 20 years and now the performance of the developer is decreasing after 20 years. How do you motivate such developer? This is a great question, Sudesh. Um, so if someone, so and this is why at least within Microsoft we have a lot of teams, and different teams require different skill set. In fact, there was a dev who was working for the last 5 years, and typically in 4 to 5 years they'll get bored and they want to try something different. And so we will encourage, there was a time this is looked down upon, but now Microsoft has become very open about encouraging people to move around in the org, to move around in the company. And so we will encourage that person to, find something that they like, talk openly to different managers, see if they see something that they like, and then, have them move over. And something new is always a great change, right? And, in some cases, I will also suggest that if they can't find anything in this company, I will also suggest that feel free to look out even outside. But and I'm always supportive of what that person wants to do and where that person wants to grow, because in the end you really want a happy dev, right? A happy dev means a happy product. And so and if at all it is, I mean, you have to give something new to that person, right? I think that's like the best way to motivate that person.
thanks,
Does
Debbie.
that help, Sudesh?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
All right. Any other questions? Anyone, please be bold and fearless. Please ask me anything.
any more questions, participants? I informally want to thank you, Debbie, for a wonderful session today. I have so many of my classmates as well as the students and also other faculties from different colleges joining us today for this wonderful session. Thank you so much for spending time with us. and give us a great talk how to manage people and also about how the things goes for a software engineer. I request any more questions, participants? Otherwise, we can carry on with a vote of thanks. I request Angita. Angita, are you there?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So
Okay.
shall we start? Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Angita Naik, Assistant Professor in Computer Science, and it's my privilege to have been asked to propose the vote of thanks for this webinar. First, on behalf of Department of Vocational Software Technologies of Government College of Kandula, I would like to thank our resource person, Ms. Devi Furtado, for sharing her time and knowledge today. I'm sure that our students will definitely gain this knowledge. I would also like to thank our college principal, Dr. Poonakala Samant, our Bivok faculty, Ms. Professor Anna Gracie Fernandez, HOD of Computer Science Department, Professor Sujata Gaukar, and all the other faculties of the department for supporting and motivating us to conduct the webinar. I also like to thank our students for joining this webinar. With these kind words, we move to the end of today's webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me too, and for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And thanks to my team, Prachi, who has done the YouTube streaming today, and also Angita, and all the students and my batch mates and all the other faculties. Thank you very much, Debbie, for accepting my invitation and
Anything
coming.
for you, Gracie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.